obligation is to serve, protect, and defend the citizens of the United States. We are also taking strong measures to protect our nation from radical Islamic terrorism. We will work with our allies, including our friends and allies in the Muslim world, to extinguish this vile enemy from our planet.
You got President Trump last night using a specific term we certainly have not heard from the previous administration, radical Islamic terrorism. Does this hardline stance against terror mean we're finally ready to take on ISIS by identifying it here? Let's have a little debate. We got Fox News contributor, Washington Examiner contributor, Lisa Boothe, screen left, and Fox News contributor and former State Department spokeswoman, Marie Harf. Marie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Hi, and Lisa, same to you. All right, Marie, let's start with you. Your former boss, Barack Obama, when he was President of the United States, in an occasion like that, would never use the term radical Islamic terror. But the president, the current president, the new president did. What did you think about that?
Well, there's nothing magic about those three words, and they're not a strategy, they're a talking point. I'd also point out that President Trump's new national security advisor has specifically said he doesn't like that terminology because it alienates a lot of the people that we actually need to work with us in defeating ISIS. You know, in the Obama administration, we had a strategy in place. It's the strategy they're still operating under, by the way. We went really aggressively after ISIS. We've helped local forces retake a lot of territory, including parts of Mosul. So, you know, President Obama took more terrorists off the battlefield than any other president in U.S. history. And I know a lot of people were waiting for those three magic words, but I don't think they really, signify a shift in strategy, at least not one that was outlined last night.
Well,
they're just words. They're not a strategy.
Well, they are words, and when you don't use them, people go, well, somebody's being politically correct here, right, Lisa?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of Americans wanted President Obama to differentiate between radical Islamic extremists and the rest of, the Muslim population. But, look, I think more importantly, President Obama, words do matter, because President Obama had previously said that he has no plan to defeat ISIS, and that made a lot of Americans feel very unsure in this fight against ISIS and this fight against terror. And I think one of the most important things that President Trump has done is ask for a comprehensive plan from General Mattis, or Secretary Mattis. And I think that's really important, because here we have a guy who has been sort of uniformly praised for being this brilliant military strategist, and someone who formerly, as recently as 2013, served as the head of CENTCOM.
Sure.
So this is a guy who is intimately familiar with the Middle East and a lot of the troubles and concerns that we face as a country.
Okay, let's move on. Here's another soundbite from last night where Donald Trump, the new president of the United States, talks about what exactly he's got to deal with.
In the last 8 years, the past administration has put on more new debt than nearly all of the other presidents combined. We've lost more than 1/4 of our manufacturing jobs since NAFTA was approved. And we've lost 60,000 factories since China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. Our trade deficit in goods with the world last year was nearly $800 billion. And overseas, we have inherited a series of tragic foreign policy disasters.
Okay, so Marie, there you've got President Donald Trump having something in common with your former boss, Barack Obama. They both inherited a big mess.
Well, I think they both use that term, but I would argue that the recession that we inherited was a much bigger mess for the country and for the world.
It was a big one.
It was a big one. And look, Donald Trump last night, he does what he does best, right? He draws a contrast with the previous administration. He's really good at giving speeches and sort of firing up the political language that he's used. But when you look at what he wants to do, tax reform, health care reform, an infrastructure bill, and increasing military spending by huge amounts that I don't think we actually need, you can't do that unless you deficit spend, which I think will get a lot of pushback from Republicans. You get a high level of growth that I don't think we're going to have, or you raise taxes. And so while a lot of what he said is popular, these are his campaign promises,
right,
when the rubber meets the road, I leave last night's speech thinking, I'm not sure how he's going to get any of it done.
Okay.
And that's the real question, I think, this morning.
Well, Lisa, you would admit that, as he takes the keys to Air Force One this past month and a half, he did inherit a mess, right?
Well, yeah, and then President Trump has been particularly and more precisely critical of President Obama for leaving him a mess in the Middle East. And that's something that President Obama has been criticized by his own former military leaders for failing to leave a status of forces agreement in Iraq, giving rise to ISIS, which we've seen in Iraq and Syria and elsewhere in the world. I mean, we've seen at least 143 inspired or directed attacks by ISIS in at least 29 different countries. So President Trump did indeed inherit a mess, and that's also of the words of President Obama's own former military advisors.
All right, excellent question. Lisa, what grade would you give last night's speech?
I thought it was an A. It was a home run for President Trump, and he needed this kind of speech last night.
Anne-Marie?
I would actually agree, but I think we're grading President Trump on a big curve here. I mean, he managed to get through the speech without going off his teleprompter.
You just gave him an A. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, come on, Marie.
But I'm giving him a President Trump A. And by that I mean he managed to stay on the teleprompter. He didn't manage to insult anyone or any large swaths of the American people.
And look, Marie, I think your former boss had a teleprompter or two, too.
He should take an A from Marie anyway.
Yeah,
she wants to present.
Donald Trump had a good night.
Together. All right.
Donald Trump had a good night. We'll see if we're in Trump 2.0 now or not.
All right.
We'll see.
We'll
all I heard was A.
We all heard that. All right, Marie and Lisa, thank you very much.